Okay, talk about PC gone mad. The country's health officials cop a shot across the bow from the government and are instructed to drop the term pregnant people and use pregnant women instead, or just women. In their bid to be all-inclusive, to be LGBT+, the health ministry forgets only women can have babies and get pregnant. Oh dear me. And we pulled together a panel to judge the politicians before Easter, and guess what's going to be in the budget? We'll do that as well. And class action is taken against Bupa, Australia. Welcome to the program.
Are we paying these people to front up, or are we paying them to fly to Wellington to eat their lunch? Should you really lose your career for refusing to take part in a 90-minute lesson about Māori culture? This government doesn't actually have any idea how to get economic growth. Show us what you made of, Prime Minister.
Editor-in-Chief with Duncan, Garner.
Okay, you're with the Editor-in-Chief. Good evening, everybody. Nice to see you. I'm Duncan, Garner. Welcome. Please subscribe as well. Really helpful. Why can't we call pregnant women in New Zealand? Why does the government have to officially instruct government public servants to state the obvious? So we'll have more on this shortly. And we'll look back over the political year so far as we head into Easter. And Bupa, big news across the ditch. Could this happen here? A class action in Australia has been launched today against Bupa, which is the aged care provider that we've been investigating here in New Zealand. But in Australia, the class action has been launched into allegations it provided poor quality services at its residential homes. The federal court lawsuit alleges that between July 2019 and April 2025, Bupa, Aged Care Australia, their homes failed to deliver the standards promised to residents. Lauren Meath is a senior associate from Echo Law in Melbourne. She says the healthcare company, quote, regularly and consistently failed to meet minimum acceptable benchmarks for care. Quote, aged care residents and their families should be able to trust that they will receive safe and high quality care when entering aged care. The experience should match what's promised and marketed by Bupa and what is expected by the Australian community and at law. And sadly at Bupa, that has not been the case. The Royal Commission into Aged Care Quality and Safety in 2019-2020 heard the evidence about unacceptably high levels of substandard care in the aged care system, including in facilities owned by Bupa. So we will watch this closely here. I think personally we need a Royal Commission here. Normally I'd shy away from another review, but a Royal Commission actually has something of substance and some teeth and some powers to subpoena witnesses and so forth. So we should do this. If the Aussies can, why shouldn't we? It's the same level of care, if you can even call it that. Let's go.
It's the Slam Dunk.
Oh dear. Calling all pregnant and non-pregnant people to listen up, please. Health New Zealand has got offside with the government and been hauled over the coals for supposedly following the standard best practice in referring to women having a baby as not women, not here in New Zealand, no, just simply pregnant people. That's how the country's top health officials decided to refer to pregnant women, as it was more inclusive, not gender specific, you see, so no one was left out. And according to the academics, this is the international best practice now. Is it? That's great news. Now, the last time I checked, it was only women who could conceive and have a baby, so therefore only women can get pregnant. Now, that I do not think will come as much of a surprise. We have had thousands and thousands of years of civilization where this has been the case, and pregnancy is exclusively, as I'm aware, the domain of women. Now, they might feel left out by health officials, dropping the term pregnant women in all of their communications. So they're not using the term pregnant women, only pregnant people. But why, in your bid to reach those who fall pregnant, would you drop the name or the gender of the very people you're trying to reach? It's utter madness. It's nonsense. Now, just so there are no surprises here, more than 50-odd thousand women every year give birth in New Zealand. Now, saying that breaks the Health New Zealand code to be inclusive. And I should say more than 50,000 babies are born to pregnant people each year. It's just such crap. I shudder at what our society has become. It's still okay to recognise women as women. And Isaac, I'm going to talk to you about this shortly too. Women are the only ones who can carry a baby, right? Tell me if I'm wrong here. So it should be okay to refer to them as pregnant women. And no one's offended by that. In fact, not calling them women might be offensive. Oh my God, we have seriously lost ourselves down this deep, cavernous black hole. If in our bid to be doing the right thing by those who are trans or whatever, we overlook to pitch pregnancy services and pregnancy messages and health messages and information at the obvious group who become pregnant, known as women. Now, we could pitch it at men who become women, but they can't get pregnant. So let there be light, and there was, when Associate Health Minister Cathy Costello stepped in, writing a letter to our public servants, instructing them to refer to the obvious, pregnant women. Costello wrote to Interim Chief Executive Dr. Dale Bramley on March the 27th, so a couple of weeks ago, telling the agency to, quote, use clear language. She wrote, recent documents that have reached my office from the ministry have referred to women as, quote, pregnant people, people with a cervix, or individuals capable of childbearing. This is what she said in the letter. Only women, she says, and people of the female sex can get pregnant. and birth a child, no matter who and how they identify. You could be identifying as a giraffe, but you can't get pregnant because you might be a man who identifies as a female giraffe. You can't get pregnant. She goes on, it's important that we have clarity about the people we're referring to when talking about women's health. Sex-specific language ensures that women know what health services they're entitled to and can access. These are easily, especially for those women with English as a second language. Clear language, she says, should be used in all documents and communications that refer to health issues specific to women or females. Academics have now chastised the government for this intervention. Victoria University senior lecturer and researcher Dr. George Parker, who studied LQBTQIA+ equitable reproductive and perinatal healthcare, it's a mouthful, said the letter went against best practice from the government. The memo is part of a broader push against equity initiatives in healthcare. It's against international practice, and it's disappointing to see this picked up by politicians in Aotearoa, which is New Zealand. Whatever this so-called best practice might be, I reckon it's nonsense when it effectively overrides the obvious. And this has been the whole debate loses credibility. Women get pregnant. Okay, folks? Women get pregnant and give birth, and women need maternity care and services, and pregnancy overwhelmingly affects the woman. And she needs care and support and access to services specific to the fact that she's a woman carrying a baby. Public health officials and academics need to get out more, and they need to live for a day or two in the real world. And Kathy Costello, take a bow, because I think you've done well. There's no escaping the fact that only women can get pregnant. A trans man who now identifies as a woman will never use these maternity services because they can't fall pregnant. Simple. Costello is right to demand women are the target of these health services. It's so bleedingly obvious. And sadly, when there's so much more to achieve and focus on in health, the Minister and her staff are forced to spend time pointing this out to health officials, who have become so scared of offending minorities that they are now alarmingly pandering to them, despite it being biologically impossible that they will ever need these maternity services. We need to get a grip, folks, about what's important in life. A man's a man, a woman's a woman, a car's a car. Don't ask applicants this. We could all waste our hours ticking boxes in the public service, and all this is achieved is to highlight a part of the ministry that's deeply out of touch with the main street. And if the government's looking to make cost savings and cuts, I think we've just found an entire department that if it disappeared, the only thing you'd hear is the applause from middle New Zealand, who quite frankly find this stuff a waste of space, time and resource. Costello says any health services specifically aimed at LGBTQ+ community should rightly be aimed at them. And let's say so. But let's not ignore 50 to 60,000 New Zealand women each year who need these vital services. To pretend they aren't women and just people is a fraud. So good on Costello for blowing the whistle on this nonsense. Sadly, in the public service, they're so distracted by appeasing minorities that they forgot to do the most obvious thing, which was actually their job.
Editor-in-Chief with Duncan Garner.
Isaac, interested in your views on this. A man's a man, a woman's a woman, isn't it? It's
kind of hard to argue with that. I think you do kind of need to take into account though as well is that based on how you described it just there, I don't know if the medical people, whatever they are, I couldn't tell. I have a feeling they might be implying rather than they're not implying that a man could identify as a woman and then become pregnant. What they are implying is that a biological woman could not identify with being a woman, but can still get pregnant because they are, biological women, but they don't identify with it, which is why they changed their language.
Correct.
So, you got to be careful. You don't want the argument to become men can't get pregnant because that's true.
No, but I sort of take that devil's advocate position. I know exactly what it is. That even though the woman might get pregnant and have a baby, but she doesn't identify as a woman. She might identify as something else, non-binary, whatever it is. So they're trying to appease all those people. But the majority of people in the New Zealand health system, like 99.9% of people that have babies, are women. Or identify as women as well. Well, 100% of women, 100% of women, 99.9% identify as women. So can we please have the word woman in there somewhere?
Yeah, it does seem like a strange thing to pour time and resources into.
Doesn't it though? But the minister has to point it out to them. The minister has to say, hey, can you put women in there, please?
Yeah.
Anyway, one of those things, brother.
Editor-in-Chief with Duncan Garner.
Okay, so the politicians have gone on a 3-week recess. Trump's caused havoc, hasn't he? The Māori Party, or Te Pāti Māori, refused to budge to Parliament's rules. Winston's telling Christopher to pull back on ringing world leaders. The Greens are melting down quicker than the Arctic ice shelf. And the budget is coming. Mortgage rates are coming down. House prices are stagnant. The economy is once again shaky. To make head and tail of where we are at, Stuart Nash, former Labour Party Minister, Ashley Church, societal commentator, property commentator, political commentator, all those things, and one of the best as well. Nice to see you guys. Thanks for joining us.
Ashley, how are you? Dunk?
Really good. Thanks, guys. I just might kick things off today with pregnant people rather than pregnant women. The government's had to tell the health ministry today to actually get the language a bit more direct and just call them women, because only women can get pregnant. Ashley, the fact you have to tell the health ministry this, it seems so ridiculous and a waste of time, but this is what we've come to, right?
Oh, absolutely. And look, frankly, about time. I mean, I'm on the conservative side of this stuff. I've been looking at what's happening with the RSE, the sex education guidelines in schools, this what the Americans call DEI. And so my attitude's been that the government should have acted on this a year and a half ago, not long after they came into office. So good on Casey Costello for doing this, but long overdue. This
will probably be this happened under your watch, Stuart, did it?
Mate, I'm on the liberal side of this thing, and I think it's absolutely ridiculous we don't call pregnant people pregnant women. They're women, for God's sake. I mean, I was reading this stuff about that guy, Benjamin Doyle, and my mind couldn't compute because it kept talking about they. We're talking about a bloke.
Yes.
I back Sean Plunkett on this. The guy's got a penis. He's a bloke. Okay? You got a vagina, you're a woman. I'm sorry. Call me simplistic, call me a guy from the regions, just the provinces. But if you got a vagina, you're a woman. You got a penis, you're a bloke, and that's the end of the story.
Yeah, well, he was born a boy. He was born as a boy. Was he born as a man? This does my head in, and I've got kids that ask me questions about this stuff now. Like, what does all this mean, Dad? What does it mean? We don't want them to be. I don't want them to be confused about this. It's got to be black and white, doesn't it?
Look, I'm totally accepting of this. If the battles around gender are long fought and won. If you're gay, you're gay. People don't really care. When Benjamin Doyle came out and said, oh, yeah, this is an anti-gay thing. Well, hold a second. We had a gay deputy prime minister for 3 years. No one cared about his sexuality. They care about your character. When you're posting stuff on social media that is on a very, very grey area, that's what we care about. We don't care if you're gay or trans. But, let's get back to what we know.
And that's really the key. I agree with Stuart completely. The Kiwis are really accommodating on this stuff. They're accepting of stuff, probably more so than I would necessarily be. And the issue is not about whether we accept that this stuff goes on. It's about having it forced down our throat by government agencies, and that's what this is about.
Yeah, no, you did right. Okay, so we head into Easter. I want to do a bit of a political wrap. Look at Trump's and how we've dealt with Trump's tariffs. And I might start on Trump's tariffs, actually. How do you think we've dealt with them? I think having Winston in America was a very good thing and a strength.
Oh, yeah, look, it was. And I think it's interesting there's been a little bit of a conflab between the Prime Minister and Winston just over how far we should go in terms of the alternatives that we should put in place for this. But I'm looking at the tariffs themselves. And in advance coming onto the show, I was hoping I could sort of give some explanation as to what was happening with the tariffs. Forget it. I mean, they're changing every day. Trump changes his mind every day. This thing's becoming a standing joke. And trying to understand it, because originally when it came out, it was based on the idea of reciprocal tariffs, which was the idea that they were putting tariffs on countries to the extent that countries put tariffs on them. That was nonsense. New Zealand doesn't tariff anybody. No. And then it became, then the argument became around trade deficits. So the argument then was that the United States was basically penalising countries with whom it had a trade deficit, but that's also not washing. So when you look at this, ultimately, this is about Trump's idea, which harks back to sort of the early 20th century, that America once used to be a superpower when it came to manufacturing, and that if they could only get back to those days, they could get rid of their extraordinary debt, and they could get back to being one of the wealthiest nations on earth. The problem with that is that as a percentage of their economy now, manufacturing is only about 8%. It's a tiny proportion of their total economy. So even if he managed to achieve what he wants and got manufacturing to take off in the States again, and the Americans to be making their own cards and their own electronic goods and those things not going off to Southeast Asia and other parts of the world, it would make damn all difference to the American economy overall. So all I see is that the guy's throwing the world into disarray for what is a frivolous pursuit which won't achieve what he wants and is really just making America a laughingstock.
Yeah, Stu, just on that, I mean, this is an international a cock-up. I mean, just as some of these nations are coming out of these recessions that we've been in, this guy goes and pulls a massive skid mark and handbrake on us. What an idiot, what a moron.
Well, Duncan, be a little bit careful there. What I would say to people watching this, it doesn't matter if you're a Labour voter or a National voter or anything in between or on the extremes. I think at this point in time, we are very, very lucky to have Winston Raymond Peters as our Minister for Foreign Affairs. He served in that role under National. He served in that role under Labour-led government. He is the consummate diplomat, and he serves us incredibly well overseas. So, as Ashley and you mentioned, having him in the States was a masterstroke, and he's the, as he said, just hold fire, let's see where we're at. Don't do anything that might annoy the president or any of his advisors, because that doesn't often end well. And so having the master diplomat on our side in America, I think we are very lucky, and we should be thankful.
Stuart's right. Stuart's absolutely right. And that's a given. The question for me, though, is what happens beyond this, because clearly Trump, whatever's driving Trump hasn't finished. It's going to carry on for who knows, God knows how long, because nobody knows what goes on in his head. And the issue for me is not just how New Zealand deals with this thing right now, but where we're going to be in 6 and 12 months' time. And so I think there's actually a buck each way position. There's the Winston position, which is about assuaging the concerns of the Americans and keeping them on side. But I think also that Luxon's right, that we have to be talking to our other partners. We have to be looking to see what the alternatives are for trading with the US, and that we have to do that pretty quickly, because the world's going to change very, very fast as a result of what Trump's currently doing.
Actually, it's interesting, though, isn't it? And I asked this of Stuart as well. It's interesting that Winston sort of diplomatically, said to the country, hey, Mr. Luxon, pull back a bit, mate. I've been here. I'm experienced. Just hold your horses. I thought it was interesting politics from Peters, almost like, hey, mate, on this stuff, I'm boss.
Yeah, there's a bit of that, and I think so. Part of it, as Stuart says, is about Winston perhaps having a better idea of how to deal with these issues at an international level. But we shouldn't also forget that halfway through an election term is basically when New Zealand first move into election mode. So we're now currently in New Zealand first election cycle for the 2026 election, and that will increase, which is why he was Deputy Prime Minister first and not second in this.
I agree. You'll see a different Winston in the next 18 months too, because he'll be more desperate. But Stuart, just on that point that Ashley makes, interesting too, because you've seen the diplomatic political approach from Winston, but you've sort of seen the commercial guy come out in Luxon, which is pick up the phone, make some deals. Let's see if we can get this over the line. I don't think it's going to work like that, because trade's a long run thing. It's done under dark, smoky rooms, and there's been international rules, and it's a slow process.
It's a very slow process, but Ashley's kind of right on this. You've got to make the phone call. Everyone's making those phone calls. I mean, the surprising thing is the Chinese are cuddling up to the Europeans and going, hey, how about it, guys? The world is a pretty interesting place at the moment when you've got the Americans backing the Russians in a European war. You've got the Chinese talking to the Europeans about trade deals, and you've got America sitting off to the side. No one knows what the hell's going on there. But that's why I come back to the point that, Luxon is the most inexperienced Prime Minister we've got. Winston Peters is the most experienced politician, and certainly the most experienced foreign minister we've got. Luxon can go and do his deals, have those conversations. No one would blame him. Should be doing that. But Winston is the guy who I think is the moderating voice. He's seen it all before. Yeah. He's got the networks. He's got the contacts. I trust him to do what's right for New Zealand.
I tell you, this will buy you a high list place, at least.
I was just going to say, is this a job interview?
This is more than that. This is a character reference. Hey?
I've got my vote.
I'm dealing with the cards we've been dealt. But he is. We all acknowledge this. The guy is 80, and he's got the constitution of an ox, but he's got the mind, a brilliant mind. He knows how to play politics. If he didn't know how to play politics, we wouldn't be talking about him, because he would have gone years ago.
It's true.
What game works.
What I've got you here, have you talked to him about joining New Zealand first?
Well, no, I haven't actually. I mean, I've been very open about this. I have an immense amount of respect for him. I was having a couple of drinks with him and Derek and a couple of the old guys a couple of weeks ago. But we just talk about the old times. We talk about the fun times. We talk about the thing that's going on. We talk about the future a little bit. But never in the talks about the future has New Zealand first said to me, Stuart, do you want to come and stand for us?
Are you a member?
Never have I said, bring out a membership book.
Are you a member?
I just enjoy the company.
Are you a member?
Are
you a member?
Am I a member of New Zealand First?
Yeah.
I'm not a member of any political party, Dave.
Have you given up your Labour Party membership?
I just enjoy friendly banter with blokes like you and Ashley, who are engaged in politics. We can have a great discussion. And now that I'm not seeking election, I can say whatever I want.
Are you no longer a member of the Labour Party?
No, I don't think I'm a member of the Labour Party.
Not financial. Oh, you have to get that sorted out, Stu.
You heard it here. You heard it here.
Anything to do with the wealth tax, anything to do with, I've made this very clear, anything to do with the wealth tax or anything to do with Te Pāti Maori, I won't have a bar of it.
Yeah. Well, that's a good point. It's a good man. You can line in the sand. You see, Hipkins won't say this, but let's go to the Māori Party. They have looked like a train wreck, especially the second part of, this quarter, the start of this year, this last 6 weeks. God, they look defiant, Ashley. They look like activists and separatists, and they're not going to move from it.
Yeah, they do. And you have to wonder whether they're actually serious about being in power or whether they just see this as kind of a glorified protest movement. And you could kind of make the same claim with the Greens. All of the things that they do, all of the controversies that they get embroiled in, give the impression that this is basically an activist movement from uni that's moved into Parliament and camped itself and is carrying on with, what they would have been doing 10, 20, 30 years ago. It's a really interesting time. And from Luxon's perspective, I mean, this is manna from heaven because Luxon was in pretty bad shape a few months ago. In fact, more recently, and his position was looking pretty scary.
Yeah.
Totally. Now, I mean, if you were Luxon, if you were Winston for that matter, and if you were David Seymour, your biggest friend at the moment is the Māori Party and the Green Party. They're doing all your work for you.
Yeah, Stu's laughing because these are his mates that he's had to deal with in the past, you see. Eh?
Mate, never the Maori Party. The Green Party, I wonder what they stand for. I mean, I seriously do. And I've written about this recently. Rod Doddle, Jet Fitzsimons, fantastic characters who believe, rightly so in my view, that they could make more of a difference working within the system. And they did a great job of holding various governments to account for their environmental credibility and credentials. Now, I mean, with James Shaw going, James was the last of the true environmentalists that people could look at and go, I get where he is. I understand his philosophy. Don't necessarily agree with him, but he's good. The Greens have forgotten that their voter base is often, we call it colloquially, Medibank mums or Remuera housewives. And what happens in these houses, and you got to generalise when you're talking about politics, is they go, well, my husband's voting for National, so National's got that vote. I've got a bit of a social conscience. I probably support National, but I like the Greens cup over a little bit, so I'm going to vote for the Greens. Those people will not vote for a socially radical party. The Green Party has become the alliance party in drag. And the reason I say in drag, you would never see Jim Anderson wearing what some of those clowns wear in the House these days.
No.
I agree with that, Stuart, with one caveat. They wouldn't vote for that party if they know it's that party. And at the moment, I think there's people that go into the voting booth and vote Greens because they've got no idea what the Greens stand for. And they believe that it is what it was when Jeanette Fitzsimons was a member of that party, and that it's focused on environmental issues, which are the last thing it's concerned about at the moment. So while I agree with what you're saying, the job of pretty much the rest of the country is to educate those people on the fact that it is not the party that they might have voted for 10 years ago.
But it's even that's right. But it's even they've become a social justice party. Even that doesn't do it justice because they've become an anarchy party. They're no longer talking about the social justice stuff.
No prisons.
They're talking about exactly anarchy, which is which is this guy this thing. What? How do you say it? They Doyle, whatever.
Bloke.
They them.
Yeah, that fella. So him, so Doyle, he to me is he's not out there talking about gay rights. There's not about that. We had that debate in the 80s. He's out there talking about something way different and trying to defend what looks to me is the indefensible.
Agreed. I couldn't agree more with you. I mean, like I said, who cares if he's gay or trans? I celebrate people who celebrate their own sexuality and are comfortable with that. This is not what the argument is about, and this is why this is not why his sexuality isn't why Kiwis are up in arms about what he said. They're up in arms because of some of the posts he put up on social media. And the thing is back to this, people forget, Dunk, you won't because you're old enough, that in the mid-1990s, Labour and the Alliance were neck and neck. And there was a little bit of dialogue at one point that the Alliance would take over from Labour. No. Helen Clark came along, got the proverbial sorted out. And the people who were Labour or left went, thank God we can go back to Labour. They did. Alliance as a spent force. Yes. Mark my words, and I'll bet anyone a sly hundy on this, they will be gone by 2029, maybe 26, but 29, unless they go back to their environmental roots. Because
I hope you're right.
At the moment, a socially radical party that is not.
They're still at 10%.
That is not an environmental.
Well, how do we justify?
But the one thing we're forgetting, guys, is it's entirely possible that there's an 8 or 10% of the population who actually support that stuff, who are themselves social radicals and who actually believe that this is the right way to go. And if that's correct, then they're not going to disappear in 29. They're still going to be around, and that movement may well grow. And that's the bit that old conservatives like us don't necessarily take into account. We assume that everybody thinks the way that we do, and that if they're appraised of what's actually going on, that they will stop voting for these people. It's entirely possible, if you look at what's going on in our universities, that way of thinking is actually growing, and that the support for that's going to grow, not reduce.
God. So how does Hipkins manage this?
One last thing, you might be right, but you're talking about 250 to 300,000 people. I'm not sure if there is that, but I could be wrong. We could be wrong, and we'll find out in 18 months.
I hope you're right and I'm wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, no police. I mean, which Rimbury housewives or Epsom mothers or whatever want to defund the New Zealand police? I mean, because you can put layer upon layer. They have had a dreadful run. They have had 18 months, a horror run, and they cocked up James Shaw. They ditched him and then had no one to replace him. They've had MP after MP go by the wayside for their lack of ethics and so forth. And Chloe Swarbrick's been found out on this latest one because she backed him, yet she asked him to change the post and delete the post and get rid of it, and he defied the party, but still was picked on the list. What does that say about the systems?
Do you think he's toast, Stuart? Do you think Doyle's toast?
I hope so, and I hope the Greens see some common sense around this, because he is devaluing their brand at a great rate of knots. So he really is.
He's a list MP. He ain't going
Well, he's a list MP, so he can go. You know, he's still the early childhood education spokesperson, for God's sake. I mean, what is wrong with these people?
I've forgotten about that. Wait, yeah. Chloe Swarbrick, very good, well done. He came into that his media thing the other day without any of the leadership around him.
Yes, says it all, doesn't
that's
it?
telling. That's telling.
That's that all.
So we spoke about Te Pāti Māori. We spoke about, and now let's talk about the budget, because this is really crucial now for the government. Because I agree, I thought Luxon was in real trouble 8 weeks ago. I've now come to the conclusion that they're not going to get rid of him because of what's going on the left. They're just going to sit back and order the popcorn, but he was in trouble, and maybe a lot of that stuff made him, get out there and take the lead, and he's doing okay. So what do you do in the budget? You've got to do something that sort of reminds people that you're there and you're in office.
But this isn't the budget you do it in, Duncan. You do if you're going to do something to change that, to move the dial, you do it in the next budget, which is the one that precedes the election. This is a midterm budget. Nothing spectacular is going to happen in this budget. And in fact, Willis came out a few weeks ago and basically indicated what's going to be in it. There's not going to be any additional spending. There's going to be a continual cutting of costs in areas of the public service that the government thinks are non-essential. There's going to be a focus on defence, obviously. So to contradict myself, that is going to be an area of new spending, but it will be the one significant area. But there's not going to be a lolly scramble. They'll stick to that 2.4 billion operational allowance, and I think they'll carry that over into next year. And this will be, there will be one big change that I would expect. I'll be interested in Stuart's view on this, and that will be around the voluntary sector and the charitable sector and tax deductibility. I think you'll see some big changes there, and that will be designed to extract some more revenue out of that sector.
I think you'll see something in KiwiSaver. I think they'll do something in KiwiSaver. We're so far behind Australia. We need to somehow have a standard of living in the future that can keep up with the others. I think something has to change. The settings.
Hey, tell me, are you guys surprised? So, we've got hospitals that are falling down. We've got classrooms that aren't fit for purpose. We haven't got enough money for the new police that were promised. And yet the amount, the 1% increase in defence spending, that is phenomenal. There are a lot of hospitals, schools, cops, nurses and teachers in that spending. I'm surprised we got that through. We've got to play our part. There's no doubt about that. But, when I was
come out of Washington
in Cabinet,
it's the price
economic development, actually. A guy came and showed us these massive big drones. We're not talking innovative here. We're talking stock standard. They could patrol our economic zone in a way that planes can. We do need ships that are fit for purpose to go and help with humanitarian, disasters in the Pacific. And we need a ready reaction force like the SAS and a well-trained but small army. I don't know if spending $14 billion. That's a lot of money. That's a
12
lot
billion.
of school.
Yeah, so 12 billion over 4 years. It's huge in terms of the deficit next. This budget will be 12 billion, so there'll be a deficit post of 12 billion. So that's the deficit. It is massive, and we've fallen behind so much. It's the price of America. It's the price of partnership. It's the price of being an international citizen. We have let people down. We have freeloaded for too long.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you, Duncan. I mean, I understand what you're saying, Stuart, but I think we've basically been mooching off the rest of the world for the last 30 years, and this is the price of that catching up on us. But interesting you should raise those issues around police, education and health, because I agree with you. I just have a feeling, and it's interesting because I've heard some of the rhetoric over the last month or so from Willis, and she's talking about maintaining the surplus in 26-27, so still achieving that. I have a feeling that they're going to move some deck chairs around in order to make some changes there. The problem they've got, of course, as you know better than I do, it doesn't matter what they do in that space, it's not going to be enough, and they're still going to get chastised for it.
Yeah, and I just think that we have we've mooched. What was the word you used? We've been mooching. I was in Australia recently, and the cab driver first thing he said to me was, "Are you guys going to pay your way, shorty? Because we're fucking sick of you guys suck-holding off us in our defence force." And I was just he was really angry, and I hadn't thought about it.
I know that guy.
Yeah, there's a few of them, but it's true though, isn't it? I mean, you look at our. I was down at the Navy base the other day. God, there's not much there. There's even less now, and you have to pull your weight as one of these Five Eye partners. You just have to. It doesn't matter.
Well, you kind of do, but I think there are really innovative ways to do things. I mean, it's like police. Let me go back to the police. One of my favourite topics. Former Minister of Police, love those men and women. Man, they do a fantastic job. But when I was there, they spent $50 million on an Eagle helicopter. You can buy drones that do exactly the same thing for a fraction of the price, and you could have these things flying around all our major cities doing exactly the same thing, going after the bad guys. In this day and age, I think there are technology solutions that replace the need for billion-dollar planes. And
I think you're right.
We don't need warships. We don't need these things. We need a very, very highly trained army that can go in. If there's a peacekeeping force heading into Ukraine and a UN one, and we decide we want to be part of that, then of course we've got to contribute. But I don't think we need to try and outmuscle these guys.
Yeah,
the bit we don't know, none of us in these rooms know, is to what degree this is about integration with other military services in the South Pacific, though, because I assume that in this spend, they've talked to Australia and they've talked to Indonesia and other nations, and there's some logic to the spend. So it's not just about us saying, hey, going to the Kmart of military spending and buying the best equipment. So I'm guessing there's a strategic element to this that perhaps we don't understand.
This always happens when Nationals there. When Max Bradford was Defence Minister in 1998, 97, he called me up to his office, and I was a young journalist at TVNZ, and he said, "We've got these. I don't even know what they're called now, but they were to replace the fighter jets that we had, the
labs.
Yeah.
Oh no, not the
labs.
No.
The Air Mackies or whatever they are.
Italian, whatever they were called. Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
F-12s. Were they F-12s? Something like F-12s.
Yeah.
And they were coming from somebody European country via America, and we had to pay something like 3, 4, 5, 700, 800 million or something. And that was big money back then. And Birch, they were going to do it, but they were trying to sell it to the media as and they're trying to do these stories about this is good news, and we never went with it in the end. But they always tried on National. There's an American government in. You've had 2 Chinese warships come into the Tasman Sea, and that's just why we're now spending the money.
So what do we think we're going to do? A whole bunch of Chinese warships come down, so we're going to send a little frigate out? I mean,
that's what happened.
Blackguards.
During World War II, what New Zealand did in terms of contributing to the Air Force is we sent pilots across the UK to get trained. No reason why we can't do now. We can still have 10, 12, 20 New Zealand fighter pilots, but they just train with the US or the UK or even the Australian Air Force. There are ways and means to do this.
Yeah.
But Stuart, I completely agree with that. I completely agree with that, but you can't come out in this current military environment and say, look, we're not going to spend anything now, but if there's a war, we'll send people over to help. I mean, much as I agree with that completely, the optics of it don't work.
It's interesting, isn't it? So when the budget is framed, and everyone says it's the start of our broccoli budget, or whatever, this is going to be the military hardware budget. This is going to be the gun budget. I mean, this is going to have no relevance to people's lives.
I agree with you. I say, look, there's going to be cuts right across the board, except military. I don't know about KiwiSaver. I don't think the government's got any money to do anything.
Well, with KiwiSaver,
what's going to happen is guys like Matthew Hooton and yourself are going to jump up and down and say, you guys are spending more than Labor ever spent at any point in time, and you're borrowing more. So, this is a government who came in on frugality. They are spending and borrowing like drunken sailors.
Yeah, they are.
That's a little unfair, though, because the reason they're spending more is because of the position they found themselves in 2023. So you're right, but they're there because they were put in that position.
Yeah. The KiwiSaver stuff doesn't have to cost the government any money, because what you do is you put the employer and the personal rate of contribution up. So employer goes to 4%, we go to 4%. It doesn't cost the government anything. Unless they want to take money out of it and halve the government contribution. You could save money there.
No, you don't want to do that. You want Kiwis to be in a position, so when you say we're going to increase the age of super up to 67, people have got fantastic KiwiSaver funds to fall back on.
Yeah. Okay, let's wrap it up like this. Who's been the politician of the year so far? If you look at just because we're going to a bit of a break now, there's been a recess. Who is it this year?
Ooh.
Who stands out?
I know who Stuart's going to say.
Yes, of course. Yes, the Right Honourable. It says Winston Raymond Peters. But I would say Peters, actually. Peters or Seymour.
Oh, no. Seymour has excelled in mediocrity. His charter schools have been a failure. The school lunches have been a failure. You show me one thing. His Treaty Principles bill has been a failure. You show me one thing he's achieved.
Yeah, okay. Maybe he's been out there. Maybe he's been out there a lot.
Hey?
He's been out there a lot.
He has. Look, in a crisis, you need experience, and I do think we're in a little bit of an economic crisis at the moment. And if this hadn't happened, I don't know if I would have said Winston, but I do think for a man for our time, And it's not because I have an immense amount of respect for them, but I do. I respect most politicians, to be honest, not all of them, but most of them. But I do think Winston has done a very good job as our Deputy Prime Minister. And as Foreign Minister, unrivaled at this point when we need a very cool head and a very, very experienced diplomat.
He's calm and he takes his own counsel, and I like that. Probably better than Nanaia Mahuta, maybe. Ashley?
Yeah, it's a little bit unfair on the current House to ask me, because I vacillate back and forth on this. If you'd asked me sort of middle of last year, I probably would have said Winston as well, just on some of the stuff that he was doing on the traditional Conservative side of the aisle. The problem for me is I'm a massive supporter of Israel, and I think Winston's taken some extraordinarily stupid steps when it comes to Israel, and he's been led by the nose by MFAT, unfortunately, on some issues that he shouldn't have been, and he's smarter than that. And I think that probably put me off him over the last 6 or 7 months. But if I was to take that out of the equation, I would probably also have to say Winston, just based on the fact that he's been that moderating force, and he's been the he's been the anchor to Luxon over what probably could have been a much more difficult time if he wasn't there.
Yeah, and I think we need to. That's why. And
Who would you say, Doug?
Oh no, I'd say Winston. I would have said Winston right from the start. I just think that he's 80 years of age. Now, I can't imagine having the same energy that this guy has. He's 80. I don't know if he got health issues or whatever, but this guy gets on planes, goes to Washington, does our business, gets back to Christchurch and does a speech that leads the bulletins and sets the agenda and calls out some of those protesters, the anti-Israeli protesters. This guy is on top of his game. He's at 80. We thought he was a spent force. He was a hothead. He could lose his cool. This guy is now the voice of calm and reason.
Quick question. Is that all about to change over the next 18 months? Because he's in a different mode now. He's in election mode.
I would, could they keep him? Imagine that. Imagine you say to Seymour, I'm ditching this coalition agreement. We're going to keep Winston because we need him in this role with America. If things have changed, the world's changed. Imagine that. It would cause all sorts of shit, wouldn't it?
Here's my bet. I think there'll be an early election. I wouldn't bet the House on it, but I'll bet a sly hundy on it. And the reason I say that is I don't think Seymour will adapt to the class and dignity required for a Deputy Prime Minister. He is too immersed in the politics of division. I don't think he's been a particularly good coalition partner. He's caused them a whole lot of risk, especially around lunch and schools. I mean, that broke out of the Beltway and remained a story outside the Beltway for a long time. Yeah. I reckon 2026 there'll be an election before 1st of July.
I'm not sure I agree, and I think you're being a little bit unfair on Seymour, because I mean, if a banana came out and it was overripe, the media were immediately on it, and yet Tamitha Paul and Boosie Boy could be making whatever comment they wanted, and that didn't make the media for about 4 days until that news had to break. So I think a lot of that's been more about media fascination and focus than it has been about necessarily missteps. Big call on whether there's going to be an early election. Don't know that I agree. I'll be interested to see whether that actually pans out.
I tell you what, we'll make this one of the last thing we talk about. I tell you what, though, you could look at your own coalition and say, oh, things are a bit messy in here now because this is happening with Winston, this is happening with David. But then you look across and you look at the left and you go, right, we're going early because those pricks are so unorganised. They're in such turmoil. I do not want people to forget Bushy Boy and whatever it is and Tamitha Paul. I don't want them to forget the Maori Party and their antics. We're going to the polls, folks, and we'll get 50%. You never know.
Never know.
We'll see.
Okay. Hey, nice to see you guys. Thank you so much. You're the best. I really appreciate it.
Guys.
Okay.
Cheers, Duncan. Have a happy Easter, everyone who's watching.
Thanks, Ashley. Cheers, mate.
Thanks, guys.
No worries. Ta-da.
Editor-in-Chief with Duncan Garner.
Brilliant. Always on point, those guys. Letters to the editor. What have we got here? I've got a couple, so you go with the first one, Isaac. Is that all right?
Yep, no worries. Oh, it's a long one. Awesome. Hi, Duncan and crew. I currently worked as a level 4 senior caregiver at Bupa Foxbridge, going on 3 years. I have been following the podcast and have heard all the emails that you've received, and without a lie, I found them all to be a reflection of how dysfunctional Bupa really is. I was one of the caregivers who was made redundant, and now I have the freedom to speak up and not be shut up. I can't even begin to tell you the severity of what I had to witness while I was working there, from having to watch a resident be held down by 4 staff while on the floor being showered, even after telling the staff that this was elder abuse, and then to be told, it's okay, we were given permission by the RN, which did not make any sense to me, Duncan, as Bupa Foxbridge has no restraint policy, and they don't adhere to the values and purpose. Another example was at the commencement of a morning shift, finding a resident in his bed with a deflated mattress and a pool of urine, only wearing a pad that was totally soaked with urine, only wearing a thin singlet, windows open, and it was ice cold to the touch. Another incident was down in the dementia unit, 2 caregivers rostered on, one being myself, other caregiver, had to attend training, even after me voicing my concerns about being left alone and only stating that it was a health and safety risk, leaving only one caregiver to supervise 24 residents with no additional help. An incident broke out between a few of the residents, putting myself as well as other residents at risk. Emergency bell was activated, but the response time seemed forever, and this is just to name a few. I could go on, but there's not enough time in the day to continue. Now, Duncan, I have 10 years experience working with dementia residents, and to be put in a situation like that, I feel unjustly treated. It was so disheartening that these things were allowed to happen, and all management did was evade accountability. It's ungodly and unthinkable, and management have a lot to answer to. Please, 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 Duncan, enough is enough. Something needs to be done in support of all our defenceless and vulnerable elderly people before it's too late. You are our only hope. K. She went a bit Princess Leia there at the end, didn't she?
Yeah. But this is interesting coming on the back of what we've heard today, which is that Bupa Australia is being sued effectively, class action from families and staff and that sort of thing. So Bupa in Australia not up to scratch allegedly, or that's the allegation, and it's the same sort of thing here. Duncan, I am happy. What does it say here? Next one here. Duncan, I'm happy to discuss with you any further matters and hopefully find a solution where we can finally put a stop to this and find ways to improve the caregiving environment and all care facilities. Thank you for taking the time to read my concerns. I look forward to hearing back from you, but we need some kind of wider inquiry. That's from Kay. Hi, Duncan. With the growing need for aged care, I would like to see the government put together a task force comprised of experienced aged care workers from all areas, family members, ex-family members, other medical professionals, to examine the current system and make recommendations for change that becomes binding. I could go on and on, look at many of the angles, but enough said for now. Thank you for bringing this out for discussion. Kind regards, H. P.S. On a personal note, I followed your journey on Celebrity Treasure Island. Oh, yes. I hope it was a true reflection of all participants, as I came to admire you and several others for not least of all your loyalty and integrity. It can't be said for some of them others. Good on you for putting yourself out there. I could never do it. Yeah, thank you for that. God, that was a year ago.
Yeah.
That was a year ago.
A long time ago.
Now, I meant to be doing 50 press-ups today because we've reached 20,000 subscribers. I've done my shoulder at the gym.
Okay.
But I'll do it tomorrow. I will do this before Easter. I'll do 50 press-ups for getting to 20,000 subscribers. But honestly, I can't get it up. I can get there. I can't get this one up. So it's just a bit tight. Okay, right.
Editor-in-Chief with Duncan Garner.
No, I will get there, though. I'll get there tomorrow. That's us. Thanks for your feedback and support. Get in touch through our social media. Duncan Garner Podcast on TikTok, Instagram. Flick us an email. Duncan at rover.nz. We like your emails. They come through, so please keep them coming. To my team, Isaac, thank you, boss. Good man. We'll do this again tomorrow. To pregnant people, you can be women. It's okay. Remember, life isn't a dress rehearsal. There's no curtain raiser. This is it. We live in one of the best places on earth, so get out and enjoy it. And have a great rest of the day. Take care. Be safe. Look after yourselves. Catch you.
Editor-in-Chief with Duncan Garner.